So, you've probably heard of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. It's one of those books that sticks with you, but it's not just a story about a trip up a river. Not really. It's a deep dive, a journey right into the core of the human soul. We're going to explore what happens when all the rules of so-called civilization just melt away.
All right, here's how we're going to navigate this whole thing. First, we'll look at the two rivers that frame the story. Then we'll see how civilization starts to rot from the inside out. After that, we'll try to solve the puzzle that is Kurtz, unpack a really important lie, and finally come face to face with the idea of the darkness inside all of us. So, let's kick things off with the novel's structure, which is just brilliant. It connects two worlds that feel like they're poles apart, England and Africa. Conrad uses something called a frame narrative. So the thing is, our narrator, Marlowe, isn't actually talking to us, the readers. He's on a boat, floating peacefully on the River Thames in London, telling his crazy story to his buddies. His tale about the brutal Congo River is a story within that calm setting. And right away, that structure suggests that maybe these two worlds aren't so separate after all.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. Conrad immediately starts blurring the lines. You've got the Thames, all orderly and civilized, right? And then you have the Congo, which is presented as this chaotic, dark, savage place. But by putting one story right inside the other, he's hinting that maybe they're just two sides of the same coin, 2 points on the same dark timeline of human history. So this whole setup makes the real point crystal clear. The journey from London to the Congo, it's not really about the miles. It's about what happens to your mind, the slow erosion of your morality when you're completely cut off from everything you know.
Okay, so let's get into the thick of it. The second Marlowe sets foot in Africa, this whole grand idea of European efficiency and civilization just begins to fall apart at the seams.
I mean, from the moment he gets there, it's just one frustration after another. The steamboat he's supposed to captain? Oh, it's at the bottom of the river. The rivets he needs to fix it? Nowhere to be found. Everything is just stuck. And you realize these aren't just random accidents. They're symbols of a system that is completely rotten from the inside out. The broken equipment is a perfect mirror for the broken morality of the people there.
In fact, you start to get the feeling this is all on purpose. The station manager seems to be intentionally slowing things down, probably because he's jealous of the company's star ivory trader, Kurtz. It shows you that these civilizers care way more about their petty little power struggles than any kind of noble mission.
And this leads Marlowe to a pretty stunning and ironic conclusion. On his boat trip up the river, he's got these European guys he calls pilgrims. They're greedy, they're lazy, and they just randomly fire their guns into the jungle. But his crew, who are literally labeled cannibals, show this incredible dignity and self-control even when they are starving. You see what Conrad's doing? He's completely flipping the script on the whole Victorian hierarchy. He's saying that a person's true character has absolutely nothing to do with their skin color or where they come from. It's all about how you act when the pressure's on.
And all of this, every broken rivet, every petty argument, it's all building towards one person, the legendary, mysterious agent, Kurtz. He is the destination. He's the whole point of this journey. And he is the embodiment of its madness.
But before Marlowe can meet the man himself, he runs into this totally bizarre character. A young Russian trader, dressed in clothes so patched up with bright colors that he looks like a harlequin. And this guy, he's a true believer. He's this strange, almost surreal bridge between the world Marlowe left behind and the absolute insanity that Kurtz has unleashed. The Russian's devotion is what makes him so chilling. It just goes to show you the magnetic power of Kurtz's personality. I mean, this guy worships Kurtz, even though he's literally living in the shadow of severed heads that Kurtz has stuck on the fence posts around his hut. It's terrifying.
And then, finally, Marlowe reaches Kurtz. He finds a man who has gone so far over the edge, he's practically a ghost. And as Kurtz lies dying on the steamboat, he manages to whisper these two famous, haunting words. But what? What could they possibly mean?
Well, Marlowe becomes convinced that in that final moment, Kurtz saw everything. He saw his own monstrous actions, he saw the pure evil of the whole colonial project, and he passed judgment on all of it. For Marlowe, that little flicker of self-awareness it's a kind of victory, a tragic moral victory, a final human judgment on his own inhumanity.
Marlowe actually makes it out of the Congo alive, but he brings the weight of Kurtz and that final truth back with him. And this leads to his final, and maybe his toughest, moral crossroad.
He goes back to that sepulchral city in Europe and visits Kurtz's fiancée, his intended. She's been waiting for him, holding on to this perfect, idealized image of Kurtz as this great humanitarian. And then she asks Marlowe the one question he's been dreading. What were his last words?
Marlowe knows the brutal truth. He knows what Kurtz really said, but looking at her, he just can't bring himself to destroy her illusion. So he lies. He tells her a beautiful, comforting lie. He says the last word he pronounced was, "Your name."
And you have to ask, why lie? The book seems to suggest that maybe civilization itself is just too delicate. It can't actually handle the raw, unfiltered horror that Kurtz saw. It needs these beautiful illusions to keep going, to keep the darkness from swallowing everything whole. And this brings us right to the end, to the final, haunting point of the whole story, pulling all these threads together.
The ultimate takeaway is that the heart of darkness, it isn't the Congo. It's not a place on a map that you can just visit and then leave. No, it's a permanent part of being human. It's something lurking just under the surface, always, even on that supposedly civilized River Thames, right where Marlowe's story began.
So the story leaves us with some pretty chilling takeaways. It's a warning about what happens when you have absolute power with zero accountability. It shows us how some truths, some experiences, are just impossible to explain to people who haven't been there. And it leaves us with the terrifying idea that our civilization is really just a thin, fragile mask we wear.
This is maybe the best way to sum up the novel's entire message. Everything we've built, all the things we believe make us civilized, they're just a thin little layer floating on top of a vast, deep, dark sea of primal human nature.
And so, the story throws the question right back at us. If that thin layer is all that separates us from the horror, what does that really say about who we are?